Hello everyone. I know it's been a while. It's really hard to find time to film a video while I have a baby. So I try to even do it in the mornings when I get to school before school even starts. So today I want to talk about my 4 favorite series of all time. I feel like anybody who knows me probably knows that these are my favorite series, so it's nothing new. But I realize that most of you guys, if you subscribe to me and you don't know me personally, then you don't know my favorite series of all time. And of course I love talking about my favorite books. So today I'm going to show you my 4 favorite series and tell you why they are my favorites. I'm not going to give you too much of a summary of each one because honestly that's just kind of boring, but I think instead I just want to tell you why I love these books so much. I've not really prepared anything in advance to talk about, but honestly if I don't know why these are my favorite books, then I mean that would be really weird. So anyway, let's get started. So going in reverse order, I'm going to do my number 4 favorite first and count down to number 1. Number 4 is the Game of Thrones series. So I can't say that this would have I mean technically it could be higher, it could even be number 3 potentially on my list, but because I've only read the series one time, I think books 1 and 2, I did listen to the audiobook for a second time. And of course I've watched the show and everything. But because I've not read it as near as many times as I have my other 3 favorites, I'm gonna put this in the number 4 spot. So this is my signed copy. I do wanna do a video at some point where I talk about meeting my favorite authors of all time and like what questions I asked them and things like that. But I did get to meet George R.R. Martin at a book signing and ask him a question. So stay tuned for that video in the future. So here's my signed paperback, I know of all things, right? Of Game of Thrones, but I also have my hardback Dance with Dragons, the 5th book. I have that one signed as well. So that was exciting. And of course that was the last one that came out. So maybe one day we'll finish the series, so it's hard to say it's my favorite series when it's not even completed, which only one of these is technically completed when I look at the books on the list. So interesting. Anyway, I love Game of Thrones because it is so complex. I'm the type of reader who loves all the names and places and all the backstory of everything that you have to learn. So I know some people are put off by that, or if they're just getting into fantasy, they want like beginner fantasy or whatever, where you don't have to know all those names and places and there's not so much to remember. In fact, my mom tried to read these books and she made it maybe 100 pages in. She got to literally the part where Jaime Lannister, pushes somebody out a window. I don't want to spoil anything, but I feel like everybody knows that if you've seen it or watched it. She made it to that part, and then she said, that might not even be 100 pages in, I can't remember. She said, nope, it's just too confusing. There's too many names and too many places. Honestly, if you just kind of muddle through, you get used to it, and then you start to learn who these people are and where all these places are and all that sort of stuff. And there's maps, and there's the appendix in the back of each book, and there's the the house, the different houses with all the members of each house and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the appendix is actually huge when now that I look at it. It's like 30 pages. But anyway, I love this series. I love the fact that it goes back and forth between different points of view. We get different point of view characters in each book. Like, we don't even see Jaime's point of view till book 3, something like that. So I find that really fascinating. I love just the world that it's set in, because once again, it is so complex. Like, George R.R. Martin is just a master storyteller, where he not only has come up with this complex world and these complex characters, but the plot, like his plot is also amazing, and his writing is amazing. I absolutely love his storytelling. He's just a master storyteller who can just weave words together in such a way that it's just fascinating. So it really, to me, it all comes together here. In fact, this is probably, this and maybe my number 2 favorite are definitely the most well-written of all the books on my favorites list. So needless to say, I did not think the show was as good. The first few seasons were pretty decent. After that, it definitely went downhill. So this is number 4. Let's move on. Number 3 is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. So I talk about this a lot on my channel, I feel like, and I want to talk about it even more because I love the Dresden Files, and I don't know that enough people are talking about it. Okay, wait, let's stop and smell, because that's what we do. Okay, yeah, it smells really good. It smells old, even though this book's not that old. So I own all of these. I have the paperbacks of the first 9, I think it is, and then starting at 10, I started buying all the hardbacks. I think at book 10 is where I had to actually start waiting for these to come out, which there's something to be said for that. I do feel like when you have to wait for a book to come out, it honestly makes it even better, because you have so much time in between each book to be pondering what's going to happen next and analyzing and going back and rereading. So I've reread these books multiple times. I've probably read the first, I don't know, the first 8 or so. I've probably read those like 5 times each. I would keep doing rereads of the series, waiting for like the next one to come out. Now, the last couple books I've only read 1 time each because they just came out this year. There are, I don't want to say it wrong, there's 17 books now, right? Yeah, there's 17 books in the series now, 2 of which came out this year, but it had been 6 years before the previous book had come out. So I'd waited a long time and I got 2 books, so it was worth it. This is supposed to be, I think this series is supposed to be 20 books, and then there's supposed to be a trilogy afterwards, but I think I heard somewhere where it may even be more, so we shall see. But anyway, I love the Dresden Files because it is, in fact, of all of these, well, no, I'm looking, 2 of my 4 on this list are set in the real world, and 3 are set in the real world, which is actually shocking because usually I love fantasy worlds. But this book is set in basically it's in Chicago, but it's called an urban fantasy because it is a fantasy, but it is set in a real place. And it focuses on Harry Dresden, who is a wizard, and he is also a detective. He's the only wizard detective, and he's listed as that in the phone book. And at the beginning, the first several books, which most of you have probably heard this before, but the beginning books are really just a one-off, like monster of the week kind of story, where each character or each book focuses on like one crime basically, and Harry has to solve it, and that's it. And then there's a little bit of stuff that's continued from book to book. You could almost pick up the first few individually without having read the previous ones, but by the time you get to where we are now, you have to have read the books that come before this, or you would be really, really lost. So that is one reason why I love this series, is because of the continuation now of the story. Harry has gotten in deep into some stuff by the time we are now in book 17, and I don't know where it's going to go from here and where it's going to end, but it is I know I hate to say that you have to read like 5 books before it really gets any better, but you kind of do. Once you get to book 5, I feel like book 5 is where, even book 4 potentially is where you're like, okay, I really am invested now in this world and the overall story, not just these little one-off monster of the week kind of stories in each book. I even have my husband reading this now. He's been listening to the audiobook. I think he's on book 8, and he is really enjoying it. The other thing that I love about this book is the humor. So the other 3 books that I'm going to be talking about on my list are really not funny at all. They're pretty serious, like Game of Thrones. I mean, yeah, there's a little humor here and there, a little dark humor maybe, but these books are really funny. They are told in first-person point of view, and Harry Dresden is just a hysterical character. So Jim Butcher is a fantastic writer when it comes to humor. He also has great action scenes, and I feel like that is really rare. Honestly, action scenes usually bore me in most books, but his are, I mean, they're not too drawn out, but they're long enough and just well choreographed enough, I guess, that it really seems like you're watching a movie. So that is what I really enjoy. Do not recommend the TV show, though, that they tried to make on the Sci-Fi Channel. It says, as seen on Sci-Fi here on my book. Terrible. Don't even try watching it. All right, let's move on. All right, number 2. Now, this is so hard because technically this is my favorite author of all time, although it's not my favorite series. So it's so hard. I mean, it really kind of is. I don't know. It's like numbers 1 and 2 are so close that it's hard to decide. But this is my favorite author, and I love these books so much, and I've reread them a million times, and no one's going to be shocked to hear this if you know me at all. It is The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. So these are something that I have read since I was in high school. I read Interview with the Vampire in 9th grade. And once I started teaching, I realized when I would teach 9th graders, I could not imagine them reading this book. And I'm like, what was I reading back then? What was I doing? Why did my parents let me read this? But anyway, I absolutely loved it. And I remember that I did almost give up. I think I read like 50 pages in 9th grade, and I thought, this is really weird. I got to the part where, Lestat's like drinking blood from a rat or something. And I was like, this is gross. Why am I reading this? I honestly don't even know why I kept going. But I think it was the writing style, because I loved it so much. It reminded me of the books I actually read in school, because she writes very like literary fiction style, almost like classic literature kind of. It's very sort of dense. I mean, you wouldn't think she's writing about vampires. It's definitely not the style that you would expect to be about vampires. But it really is about more than that. Each book kind of tackles, I don't know, a little bit more of a serious topic than just vampires. It really does ask questions about kind of existential questions, I suppose, about life and death and the universe and our purpose in living and all this stuff, and good and evil. And so, I mean, it really brings up a lot of big issues and tackles them in such a way I mean, obviously from a vampire's point of view, but you know, that makes it cool, I guess. So I actually, this one's signed as well. I know, apparently I just really like having paperback signed. Yep, it even says for Megan, look, for Megan, and then Anne Rice. I will tell you the story about this one in a video as well, because I did get to meet Anne Rice and I did get to ask her a question as well. In fact, I asked her the same question that I asked George R.R. Martin when I met him. When we got to go up in the line, we got to ask each one a question as we were getting our book signed. So I will tell you about that though in a future video, the whole story of meeting these famous authors. Oh, and I met Jim Butcher too. I didn't tell you that. The previous book I was talking about, I did meet Jim Butcher as well, and I asked him a different question, but honestly I can't even remember what I asked him, so we'll talk about that in another video too. So this series focuses on mostly Lestat, who is not really the narrator of this book, but he is just the most wonderful character of all of literature. He is my favorite character. He has, you know, this blonde curly hair, and he just does whatever he wants. He's this wild, crazy vampire who will do really, yeah, he just lives, he makes his own rules basically and plays by his own rules. Even if other vampires are much older and they're like, now Lestat, you can't do blank, he's like, well, whatever, I'll do whatever I want. And that's why he's the best character of all time. And the plot is really good, although it is very slow moving. There's not too much of a plot in some of these books, but when there is, it's really good. These are very character driven novels, so if you don't like that, you would probably not like these books, but I absolutely love them, and I will tell everyone that they should at least give them a try. I had my parents even read Interview with the Vampire, and needless to say, they didn't want to read any more in the series. There are 10, by the way, in the series. But oh yeah, but my parents, you know, they just weren't into vampires, I guess. Anyway, there's 10 in the series, and then she was going to stop writing entirely, but then she continued much later, years later. There's also 2 sort of spin-off ones too, by the way, that are sort of set in the same universe, but they were called New Tales of the Vampire. And there's 3 sort of more newer ones now, and hopefully there's going to be more, so we'll see. She did some crossover novels too with her Mayfair Witch series, but honestly they were just kind of weird. So anyway, well, there's really just mainly one, but anyway. Okay, so read these books because they are amazing. And to no one's surprise, the favorite series of all time ever, like I said, not my favorite author because this is the only thing I've ever read by her and the only thing I ever liked by her, and that is Harry Potter. I mean, who are we kidding, right? Because I would not be a librarian. I would not even be here right now in this library if it weren't for Harry Potter. It just was the most influential book in my life, so that's why it has to be number 1, and I have read it more than any other books ever. I have read this series, I mean, I couldn't begin to tell you, 10, 15 times, I don't even know. I mean, it's been a while, actually. I think it's been a few years. I'd met my husband, but I don't think we were even engaged yet, so it might have been maybe 4 years ago that I read these series, and I cannot wait to read them with my son. It's so weird to say my son. But anyway, obviously he's only 9 weeks old, so he's not gonna be reading Harry Potter anytime soon, but hopefully I will get to read them and share this magic with him. I know, you know, there was something to be said for when I read it, when I had to wait for the books to come out. You know, I'd read the first 3, and then I had to wait, you know, years in between to read each of the rest of them, and gave me time to speculate and read fan theories online. I had so many discussion boards that I would read, and I mean, it was crazy. I even ran my own Harry Potter school. I'll save that for another video, but I was like 12 years old or 13, and I just gotten the internet, and I had, you know, 200 people signed up for my Harry Potter school online. So it was pretty wild, and built my own little website, and I had people help me run it, and I had a list of all the users. It was crazy. I'll tell you that story some other time too. So anyway, it's just so magical, and it's just part of my childhood. I'm sure the nostalgia is part of it, but honestly, I think this will be a classic for years to come. Obviously, I mean, they even built a theme park about it. Obviously, it's going to be a classic, right? So needless to say, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios is also like my favorite place ever. I remember when I first saw the castle when I went to Universal, I said, this is the happiest I've ever been in my life. Now, that was before I met my husband and before I had a baby and all that. So, but that was the happiest moment at that point, is when I saw that castle. It was so just magical. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite series are, and I will hopefully make the video soon where I tell you about the times I've met these famous authors. The only one I haven't met is J.K. Rowling. So, but I don't think she's coming here anytime soon. And like I said, I don't like any of her other books, so I don't really care. But the other 3 I've met, which I was very excited about. So, all right, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.